Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting back into X-Men with Dawn of X, and we got a bit of catching up to do, but we'll get there. But at this time, with us getting deeper into the involvement with the Children of the Vault, it's pretty crazy how their pre-existing history and how it lines up so well with where we've seen them run into the X-Men before and how that reconnects here when they meet again. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so just to give a better explanation of where we're picking up at this point, we gotta step back and take like 20 seconds to do a quick refresher. Because if you guys remember, back in the first issue of Dawn of X, we had seen times where Scott and Storm would lead teams to where they would visit these different Orchis camps, and do so mainly with the objective of shutting them down and also freeing the mutants which were held captive by them. But where we had also seen at one point in time was them bring this to this girl by the name of Serafina, who is one of the Children of the Vault who they had released at the time, and immediately after letting her out, she just disappeared. And although back at the time Magneto and Polaris wanted to pursue her, but Cyclops had said no because the priority at the time was freeing the mutants and getting them to safety. And it's really what happened in that moment, which fast forward brings us to here, to where they've eventually got a hit on Serafina's location in Ecuador. And this location is actually a bit of a throwback when it comes to the Children of the Vault, because at one point in time they actually faked their death here in order to get away from the X-Men. But we'll get back to more of that in just a little bit. But at this point here with Serafina, she uses some of the locals really just to mind control and tell them to stop someone from following her, to whom as we find out that someone is Wolverine. And so one of the things we had seen earlier throughout Dawn of X is that Serafina's abilities just didn't work on the X-Men, because essentially she has mind control and cloaking, and I want to say also technokinesis, much like Black Box, who we had talked about back when we were heavy in the 1610 universe. But aside from that, like when the X-Men originally encountered the Children of the Vault, like before Dawn of X powers in 10 and all of that, when Serafina's powers did work on the X-Men, she would mess them up pretty bad. And back at the time, I want to say Sabretooth was one of the first to find out, and it was like one of those things like when you see Sabretooth suffers, like nobody cares. And I could probably make a Sabretooth suffering playlist at this point, but I don't know if anybody cared. But on the flip side of this, when she would usually use either her cloaking or manipulate the minds of the different X-Men to drop them in some type of illusion, at the time Wolverine was the most keen to this, because with his other senses he could tell that something was off. But even with this, like at the time, like people like Cannonball, who did fall victim to her influence, like for example, he was dropped within an illusion, which in real time was like a matter of minutes, I think it was, but for him it felt like years. But with Serafina using these locals to slow down Wolverine, she probably didn't put into consideration two things. One, these dudes can fight, and two, Wolverine's been fighting for close to a century at this point. And because of that, with Wolverine not feeling threatened at all and knowing that these guys are pretty much just innocent bystanders, he really just takes them down quickly without popping claws. And if anything, I only feel bad for the dude who got punched, because in all actuality Wolverine is always punching with weighted gloves. So sorry to that man. But eventually where this takes us, as Wolverine follows Serafina's scent, this leads us back to the vault. And when Wolverine gets there, even though there's like a physical door, he's not able to pass through, because only those who are permitted in at a specific frequency would be allowed inside without just dying. So Wolverine just pulls up and he's like, you know what, let me make a call real quick. But also at this location, this is the Wild Master mode that essentially was part of your Wild Sentinel factory, which we had talked about not too long ago on the House of X playlist, where we did a bit of our refresher on Cassandra Nova. And I got a link below for House of X if you need to catch up with that, because I'm pretty sure on that playlist we talked about it like in the first video. But what's crazy is how we come back here within Dawn of X and the way that this ties into the Children of the Vault, because it really feels like we're picking up back where that had left off in like X-Men Volume 2 issue 193. Because with the Children of the Vault, who were like a different race in its own, with them neither being considered a human or mutant species, but rather they were a product of temporal acceleration, which was supposed to be designed to accelerate more generations to maturity in a shorter amount of time. But instead what had happened while they were on the ship, where they were left at sea for over 3 decades, they then evolved over 6,000 years, which is why they're mainly categorized as something completely different, because it's not like an activation of the X gene, which in that case they would then be categorized as mutants. But instead, with this different process yielding a completely different result, it's like then they fall into neither category, either human or mutant. But essentially with the Children of the Vault having this ideal to where they believe that the strongest species should rule the earth. And like with the Children of the Vault saying that, like I can imagine Apocalypse just jumping in and be like, yeah, these dudes are spitting. Like Children of the Vault? Bars. But essentially with them having this belief and being discovered by Sabretooth earlier than what they had planned, this had then drew the attention of others a lot sooner than what they had planned, because ideally they wanted to grow in secret and then attack at a quieter time. But back at the time when it came down to them going toe to toe with the X-Men, it is believed that they had been killed off with the destruction of their ship, which for the most part is essentially what had taken them off of the X-Men's radar. But with the X-Men believing this, like ever since then we have always gotten this teaser that they have been living within that wild master mode, and like as a cover up, like back when their ship was destroyed, they had reshaped like a bunch of animal carcasses, so it would appear that they had died in the explosion, but when all the while they had been here in Ecuador. And really since then they've been plotting their comeback. And when I say comeback, I'm not necessarily counting what happened in X-Men Legacy, when they were more so searching for Luz, who had escaped and they came after her, because that also ended with them crashing something else into something else. But fast forward to where we're at now with Serafina going inside of this vault, to where at this time we see her authentication process to where she crosses over to her extra dimensional city, which is where more specifically the other children of the Vault reside. But so when we get over to the X-Men, who understand that the children of the Vault, they are as much of a threat to the mutants as the mutants are potentially to the humans, and it's for this reason that Cyclops selects to send Darwin, Synch, and X-23, who he believes collectively like these are the three that are most likely to make it through, with Darwin having the ability to adapt to pretty much anything, and Synch literally having the ability to synchronize with any other mutant and copy their abilities. And then after that, Laura Kinney, who's the daughter of Wolverine and just inherently has this healing factor. And I gotta say, like, it is pretty messed up though. And we did talk about this for a bit in the last Wolverine video, but I'm just gonna say it again because this dude has a healing factor, and in this case more specifically is Laura Kinney, like all because someone has a healing factor, people like Cyclops gotta make the calls and just throw them under the bus and be like, hey, you'll live. And it's just like, man, can I go around the bus, bruh? Like, do I gotta go up under it? Like, I feel all that. But Cyclops just doesn't seem to understand. Like, his name is Cyclops, but you get it? Like, he doesn't see. Alright, but either way. But in the case of Serafina, whose entrance authorization is still processing. Like, what is this thing? Like, Pentium powered? Like, what's going on? And like, this whole time, Serafina just sitting there like, okay, like I knew I shouldn't have did that last update. But really what's happening here is that her entry is not being cleared because she's flagged for mission failure, in addition to increasing the threat level, which then triggers her scan to send reinforcements, which truth be told would be an accurate assessment. But one thing that this also showed the X-Men was that with Serafina acting alone, which is also something that the children of the Vault never do, but with her doing this, it kind of showed their hand that they're still in a growth cycle. But it's also at this time that the X-Men start to implement Cyclops' plan. And with doing so, they trigger the defense protocols so that Darwin, Laura Kinney, and Synch can use this opportunity to make their way in. But when they do this and they make their way inside, they set off all kinds of flags. Because when they go in, the scan just hits them with the, if you don't get your unidentified, asymmetrical, super contagion body face up out of here. And I'm paraphrasing, but still. But more or less, they're gonna face some resistance. But when this happens, we jump forward about 3 months to where you can tell Cyclops has been thinking about this non-stop. But according to the information that Sabretooth had given the X-Men a long time ago, like back when he first encountered the children of the Vault, like this lets them know that 3 months is about 537 years, given their accelerated time on the inside. And when Cyclops hears this, man, he's just like, man, like what did I do? And I'm telling you, like, for you guys who are following the X-Force playlist, mark my words, Hank McCoy is gonna have a moment just like Scott did right here. Like, it is coming. But so now real quick, just want to give a shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you all for your support, because what you guys do is a huge help and it really allows me to do more one spill at a time. And for anybody who would like additional information on how to become a patron, I got a link below, patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, because with Laura, Synch, and Darwin for 3 months rather than 3 decades, which equates to about 500 years versus 6,000, at this point they're likely at 8% of the increase from what we had seen of the children of the Vault. So the next time we see them, they might be a little different. And it's really hard to gauge how different, because the children of the Vault, they started as human, so it's kind of tough to tell with 3 who started as mutants. So it's almost like comparing apples and oranges. So with that said, it can be a minor change or it could be a major change. But let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.